This is HOA backfired. And yes, the tow truck really showed up. I am standing at the frozen neighborhood entrance gate in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at 7:15 in the morning, and the woman blocking my car is screaming so loud that frost is coming out of her mouth in visible bursts. Her name is Jennifer White, and she is the finance committee lead for the Spruce and Snow HOA, and right now she is pointing at my windshield like I just committed a felony. "You are in violation of winter hazard protocols," she shouts. "You are not leaving until I document this." I can see the line of cars stacking up behind me, headlights cutting through the early cold sun, and someone 3 cars back leans on their horn. I moved to this neighborhood 6 months ago because I needed a quiet place to rebuild after a messy divorce and a job transfer. I work as a mailroom supervisor at a corporate office downtown, and I hate chaos. I picked Spruce and Snow because the listing said well-maintained and the dues seemed reasonable. What I did not know was that the board treats every flake of snow like a federal emergency, and Jennifer White treats every resident like a suspect. The trouble started 3 days ago when the city plow came through and knocked over one of the reflective stakes I had placed along my driveway edge. I did not even notice it until Jennifer sent me an email with a photo attached. The subject line said, "Hazard violation, immediate correction required." The photo showed the stake lying in a shallow drift about 6 inches from the property line, and the email said I had installed it improperly and created a trip hazard during snow removal operations. I replied and explained that the plow had knocked it over, not me, and that I would fix it as soon as I got home from work. Jennifer replied within 10 minutes. "That is not acceptable. The policy requires stakes to be anchored with winter-grade hardware and positioned according to the setback chart. You will need to submit a correction plan and proof of compliance by end of business today or face escalation." I did not even know we had a setback chart for plow stakes. I went outside that evening, picked up the stake, and stuck it back in the frozen ground. I took a photo with my phone and sent it to Jennifer. She replied an hour later. "This does not demonstrate compliance. I am forwarding this to the compliance officer for review." The next morning, I found a printed notice taped to my front door. It was on HOA letterhead, and it said I was being fined $50 for failure to maintain winter safety standards and another $25 for delayed response to a board directive. The notice was dated 2 days earlier, which made no sense because I had only received the first email the day before. I called the HOA management company and got a recording that said they were closed for the holiday weekend. I emailed Jennifer and asked for clarification. She replied with a single sentence. "I am calling management, and I am going to be dramatic about it." That was when I realized this was not about a plow stake. I went to the neighborhood office the next afternoon and asked to see the winter policy manual. The office manager, a tired-looking guy named Carl, handed me a 3-ring binder with about 200 pages of rules. I flipped to the section on snow removal and found a paragraph that said residents are responsible for clearing sidewalks within 24 hours of snowfall and maintaining clear sightlines at intersections. There was nothing about plow stakes or setback charts. Carl shrugged. "Jennifer added that last month," he said. "She has been pushing a lot of new winter stuff since she joined the finance committee. She says it is about liability, but honestly, I think she just likes having something to enforce." I asked if I could dispute the fine. Carl said I could file a complaint with the board, but the next meeting was not for 2 weeks, and in the meantime the fine would accrue interest at 10% if I did not pay within 7 days. He handed me a complaint form and told me to fill it out and drop it off by Friday. I took the form home and started writing. I kept it factual. I explained that the plow had knocked over the stake, that I had fixed it the same day I was notified, and that the notice I received was backdated. I attached the email chain and the photo I had sent to Jennifer. I dropped the form off Thursday morning before work. Friday evening, I got another email from Jennifer. Your complaint has been reviewed and denied. The board has determined that your corrective action was insufficient, and the fine stands. Additionally, you are now in violation of the appeal procedure because you failed to include a notarized statement with your complaint form. A second fine of $75 has been assessed. Please remit payment within 5 business days to avoid further escalation. I had never heard of a notarized statement requirement. I went back to the policy binder and searched every page. There was no mention of notarization anywhere. That night, I called my friend Tom, who works as a security guard supervisor for a private patrol company that covers a few neighborhoods in the area, including Spruce and Snow. Tom has seen HOA drama from every angle, and he has a low tolerance for nonsense. I told him what was happening, and he laughed. "Jennifer White," he said. "Yeah, she has been calling our dispatch line about twice a week for the past month. She wants us to ticket people for snow piles that are too close to the curb, ice patches on driveways, holiday lights that are still up past January 10th. We ignore most of it because none of it is enforceable, but she keeps calling." I asked if he had any advice. He said, "Document everything and do not pay anything until you have proof that the fines are legitimate. If she is making stuff up, she will slip eventually." I started keeping a log. Every email, every notice, every interaction. I also set up my phone to record video whenever I was outside, just in case Jennifer showed up. The next Monday, I came home from work and found 3 orange cones placed in a line across the end of my driveway. Each cone had a strip of blue painter tape wrapped around the top. I had seen that tape before. Jennifer used it to mark what she called hazard zones, and she had been putting it on mailboxes, light poles, and curbs all over the neighborhood for the past few weeks. I moved the cones to the side of my driveway and went inside. 10 minutes later, my doorbell rang. It was Jennifer, holding her phone at chest height, recording me. "You just tampered with official safety markers," she said. "That is a violation of HOA enforcement protocols. I need you to put those cones back exactly where they were." I asked who authorized the cones. She said, "I did. As Finance Committee lead, I have the authority to mark hazard zones during winter emergency conditions." I asked what the hazard was. She pointed at a small patch of ice near the curb about 3 feet from my driveway. "That ice is a slip risk," she said. "You are required to treat it with salt or sand within 12 hours of formation. You have not complied, so I have marked the area as restricted until you do." I told her I would take care of it, but I was not putting the cones back because they were blocking my driveway. She stepped closer, still recording. "I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink," she said. "You think this is a game. It is not. This is about safety and accountability, and if you cannot follow the rules, you do not belong here." I acted like I was backing down, because timing was the whole weapon. I said, "Fine, I will salt the ice right now." She lowered her phone and smiled. "Good. I will check back in an hour." As soon as she left, I called Tom. He said he would swing by on his next patrol and see if he could catch her doing anything worth documenting. I also sent an email to the HOA management company, copying the board, and asked for clarification on the cone policy. I did not get a reply. That night, I went online and started researching HOA laws in Pennsylvania. I found out that HOAs are required to follow their own bylaws and that fines have to be imposed according to a published schedule. I also found out that if an HOA falsifies records or misrepresents violations, residents can file a complaint with the State Attorney General's office under the Uniform Planned Community Act. I downloaded the complaint form and started filling it out. I did not submit it yet, because I wanted to make sure I had enough evidence to back it up, but I kept it ready. The next morning, I got an email from the towing company that the HOA contracts with. It said my vehicle had been reported as parked in a restricted zone and was scheduled for removal at 8 a.m. the following day unless I moved it immediately. The email included a photo of my car in my own driveway. I called the towing company and explained that I was parked in my assigned spot and there was no restriction. The dispatcher said, "We just go by what the HOA tells us. If you have a problem, you need to take it up with them." I called the HOA office. Carl answered. I told him about the tow notice. He sighed. "Jennifer called it in this morning," he said. "She told us your car was blocking a fire lane. I will cancel the tow, but you need to understand that she is not going to stop. She has been doing this to 3 other people in the past 2 weeks. One guy already moved out." I asked if the board was doing anything about it. Carl said, "The board is scared of her. She controls the budget, and she has been threatening to quit if anyone questions her authority. Nobody wants to deal with the fallout, so they just let her do whatever she wants." I hung up and called Tom again. He said, "I am coming by tonight. I want to see this for myself." Tom showed up around 7. We sat in my living room and I showed him the email chain, the notices, and the tow thread. He shook his head. "This is harassment," he said. "You need to file a police report and get a paper trail started. Even if they do not do anything, it creates a record." I asked if he thought it would help. He said, "It might not stop her, but it will make it harder for her to lie later." That night, I drove to the police station and filed a report. The officer who took my statement was polite, but skeptical. He said that HOA disputes were usually civil matters, and that unless there was a direct threat or property damage, there was not much they could do. I asked if repeated false tow requests counted as harassment. He said it might, but I would need to prove that the requests were knowingly false. He gave me a case number and told me to keep records. The next day, I got a certified letter from the HOA attorney. It said that I was in violation of multiple community standards, including snow removal, driveway obstruction, and failure to comply with board directives. It said that my account was now in arrears for $350 in fines and fees, and that if I did not pay within 10 days, the HOA would place a lien on my property. I called the attorney's office and asked for an itemized list of the fines. The receptionist said she would request it and get back to me. She never did. I called my bank and confirmed that all of my HOA dues were current. The bank sent me a confirmation letter showing that every payment had cleared on time. I also checked my payment history on the HOA portal, and it showed the same thing. Every payment marked as received. Then I logged into the portal again and noticed something strange. 3 of my recent payments were marked as late, even though the bank confirmation showed they had cleared days before the due date. I took screenshots of both the bank records and the portal, and I saved them to a folder on my laptop. That was my trump card. I did not tell anyone about it yet, because I wanted to wait for the right moment to use it. If Jennifer was altering payment records to justify fines, that was fraud, and I wanted to make sure I had everything lined up before I went public. 2 days later, I was leaving for work and found another notice on my door. This one had a photo attached. The photo showed a snowbank at the edge of my property line, taken from an angle that made it look like it was spilling onto the sidewalk. The notice said I had failed to remove snow from the public walkway and was being fined $100. I went outside and looked at the actual snowbank. It was about 6 inches high and sat entirely on my property, a good foot back from the sidewalk. The photo had been taken from a low angle inches away to make it look worse. I took my own photo from a normal standing height, showing the snowbank, the clear sidewalk, and the property line. Then I checked my doorbell camera footage from the previous evening. The footage showed Jennifer walking up to my door at 11:30 p.m., holding her phone, taking the low-angle photo, and then taping the notice to the door. I saved the footage and added it to my evidence folder. That afternoon, I got a call from my car insurance company. The representative said they had received multiple complaints from my HOA about vehicles parked in fire lanes and blocking emergency access. She said that if the complaints continued, they might have to raise my rates or cancel my policy. I explained that the complaints were false and that I had documentation proving it. She said she would make a note in my file, but that the complaints were still a red flag and I should try to resolve the issue with the HOA as soon as possible. I hung up and immediately called Tom. He said, "This is escalating fast. You need to get ahead of it before she does something that actually costs you money or gets you evicted." I asked what he suggested. He said, "Go to the next board meeting and present everything you have. Make them deal with it in public. If they refuse, file the state complaint and copy the management company and the attorney. You have enough evidence now to make a case." The next board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. I marked it on my calendar and started preparing. Wednesday morning, I got another email from Jennifer. It said that a tow truck was being dispatched to my address at 9 a.m. on Thursday because my vehicle was parked in a restricted zone during snow emergency hours. The email included a photo of my car in my driveway taken from the street. I called the towing company. The dispatcher said, "We have an order from the HOA to tow your vehicle tomorrow morning. If you want to cancel it, you need to get authorization from them." I called the HOA office. Carl answered. I told him about the tow order. He said, "I did not authorize that. Jennifer must have called it in directly. I will try to cancel it, but she has been calling different tow companies and I do not know which one she used this time." I asked how many companies she had called. He said at least 3 that I know of. She is basically speed dialing chaos. I hung up and called Tom. He said he would meet me at my house Thursday morning to witness whatever happened. He also said he would bring his body camera and make sure everything was recorded. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the board meeting, the tow threat, the insurance complaint, and the lien letter. I was rebuilding my life after a difficult year, and I could not afford any more disruption. This was supposed to be a quiet place, and instead it had turned into a battlefield. If you are enjoying this chaos, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to get even wilder. Thursday morning, I woke up at 6:30 and checked my driveway. My car was still there. I made coffee and waited. At 7:15, I got a text from Tom. He said he was parked down the street and would come up if he saw a tow truck. At 7:30, I heard a diesel engine and looked out the window. A flatbed tow truck was pulling up to the curb. The driver got out and started walking toward my driveway. I grabbed my coat and went outside. The driver said, "I have an order to tow this vehicle. I need you to move so I can hook it up." I asked to see the order. He handed me a printed work ticket. It said the vehicle was parked illegally in a fire lane and needed to be removed immediately. The ticket was signed by Jennifer White. I told the driver that I was parked in my assigned spot and there was no fire lane. He shrugged. "I just do what the paperwork says. If you have a problem, take it up with whoever called it in." I called the HOA office. Carl did not answer. I called the management company and got the holiday weekend recording again. The driver said, "Look, I have other calls. I am hooking this up in 2 minutes whether you move or not." That was when Tom pulled up. He got out of his patrol car, body camera on his chest, and walked over. He introduced himself to the driver and asked to see the work ticket. The driver handed it over. Tom read it and shook his head. "This address is not a fire lane," he said. "Whoever called this in gave you false information. If you tow this vehicle, you are going to be liable for an illegal tow, and this guy is going to file a complaint with the state." The driver looked at the ticket again. He said, "I am just doing my job." Tom said, "I get that, but your job does not include towing legally parked vehicles based on fraudulent orders. I am a witness right now, and I am telling you this is not a fire lane. If you hook that car, I am writing a report." The driver stood there for a minute, then got back in his truck and left. I thanked Tom. He said, "That is not going to be the last time she tries this. You need to end this today." I got in my car and headed to work, but I could not focus. I kept checking my phone, waiting for the next email or the next notice. Around 10 a.m. I got a message from Carl. He said, "Jennifer just called another tow company. They are scheduled to come by at noon." I tried to cancel it, but she has the account access and I do not. You need to do something. I left work early and drove home. At 11:45, another tow truck showed up. This time, the driver was less cooperative. He said he had a signed order and he was hooking the car no matter what I said. I called the police and explained the situation. The dispatcher said an officer would be there in 20 minutes. The driver said he was not waiting 20 minutes. I stood in front of my car. The driver said, "If you do not move, I am calling the cops myself." I said, "Go ahead." He got on his radio and called it in. A few minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. The officer got out and asked what was going on. I explained the situation and showed him the work ticket, the email from Jennifer, and the bank confirmation showing my HOA dues were current. I also showed him the police report I had filed earlier in the week. The officer looked at the tow driver and said, "Do you have any proof that this vehicle is illegally parked?" The driver said, "I have the work ticket." The officer said, "That is not proof. That is just a piece of paper. If you tow this car, you are opening yourself up to a lawsuit." The driver got back in his truck and left. That night, I got an email from the HOA attorney. It said that the board had reviewed my complaint and determined that all fines were valid and that I was required to pay the full amount within 48 hours or face a lien filing. I replied and attached the bank confirmation, the screenshots of the altered payment records, the doorbell footage of Jennifer placing the fake notice, and the police report. I also copied the State Attorney General's office and the management company. I wrote, "I have evidence that the fines are based on falsified records and fabricated violations. I am filing a formal complaint with the state under the Uniform Planned Community Act, and I am requesting a full audit of the HOA's financial records and enforcement procedures. If the board proceeds with the lien, I will pursue legal action for harassment, defamation, and fraud." I hit send and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the management company. It said that the board had decided to place my complaint on the agenda for that evening's meeting and that I was invited to present my case in person. I called Tom and told him. He said he would come with me as a witness. The meeting was at 7 p.m. in the neighborhood clubhouse. I showed up at 6:45 with my tabbed binder full of printed documents, my laptop, and my phone. Tom met me in the parking lot. We walked into the clubhouse. There were about 15 people in the room, including the 5 board members, the HOA attorney, Carl, and a few other residents. Jennifer was sitting at the front table, wearing her pink parka and red knit beanie, even though it was warm inside. She had a stack of papers in front of her and a roll of blue painter tape on the table. The board president, a gray-haired man named Bill, called the meeting to order. He said, "We have a complaint from a resident regarding enforcement procedures. The floor is open for presentation." I stood up and walked to the front. I opened my binder and started talking. I explained the plow stake incident, the backdated notice, the fabricated snow removal violation, the false tow requests, and the altered payment records. I showed the doorbell footage of Jennifer placing the low-angle photo notice. I showed the bank confirmation and the screenshots proving that my payments were marked late even though they had cleared on time. I said, "This is not about snow removal. This is about a pattern of harassment and record falsification. I have filed a police report, and I am prepared to file a state complaint if this is not resolved tonight." Jennifer stood up. "That is a lie," she said. Every fine was issued according to policy, and every notice was delivered in accordance with board procedures. You are just trying to avoid accountability. I said, then explain why my payment records were altered. She said, they were not altered. You are misreading the portal. I pulled up the screenshots on my laptop and projected them on the wall using the clubhouse screen. One image showed the bank confirmation with the cleared payment dates. The other image showed the HOA portal with the same payments marked late. I said, these payments cleared 3 days before the due date. Why does the portal say they were late? Jennifer did not answer. Bill looked at the attorney. The attorney said, I will need to review the records before I can comment. I said, I have another piece of evidence. I pulled up the doorbell footage on my laptop and played it. The video showed Jennifer walking up to my door at 11:30 p.m., taking the low-angle photo of the snowbank and taping the notice to the door. I said, this notice claims the violation occurred during daylight hours and that I was notified by standard delivery. The footage shows that Jennifer fabricated the photo and delivered the notice herself in the middle of the night. The room was silent. One of the other board members, a woman named Susan, said, is this true? Jennifer said, I was conducting a routine inspection. Susan said, at 11:30 at night. Jennifer did not answer. Bill said, we are going to take a short recess to review the evidence. The meeting will resume in 15 minutes. The board went into a side room. Tom leaned over and whispered, you got her. 15 minutes later, the board came back. Bill said, the board has reviewed the evidence presented tonight. We have determined that there are significant irregularities in the enforcement procedures and the payment records. Effective immediately, all fines issued to the complainant are suspended pending a full audit. We are also referring this matter to the management company for an independent review. Jennifer stood up. This is outrageous, she said. I have been enforcing the policies exactly as written, and now you are throwing me under the bus because one resident does not want to follow the rules. Bill said, Jennifer, we appreciate your service, but the evidence suggests that some of the enforcement actions were not consistent with our bylaws. We need to make sure that all residents are treated fairly. Jennifer grabbed her papers and her roll of blue painter tape and stormed out. The next morning, I got an email from the management company. It said that an independent audit had been ordered and that all enforcement actions would be suspended until the audit was complete. It also said that Jennifer White had been placed on administrative leave from the Finance Committee pending the results of the review. 2 days later, I got another email. It said that the audit had found multiple discrepancies in the payment records and that several fines had been issued based on violations that did not match the photographic evidence. The email said that all fines against me were being reversed and that I would receive a full refund within 30 days. The email also said that the board had voted to retract all enforcement actions taken by Jennifer White during the past 60 days and that a correction notice would be sent to all affected residents. I forwarded the email to Tom. He replied, Karma. A week later, I was checking my mail and I saw Jennifer in the parking lot. She was loading boxes into her car. I did not say anything. She looked at me, and for a second I thought she was going to start yelling again, but she just got in her car and drove away. That afternoon, I got a call from Carl. He said, I thought you should know. The city sent a letter to the HOA yesterday. It said that if we keep interfering with snow removal routes and filing false tow requests, they are going to fine the association and possibly revoke our access to city services. The board held an emergency meeting this morning and voted to reverse Jennifer's winter policy and issue a public apology to the residents. I asked what happened to Jennifer. Carl said she resigned. The board accepted it immediately. I thanked him and hung up. That evening, I was sitting in my living room when I got a text from Tom. He sent me a link to a neighborhood Facebook group. Someone had posted a photo of Jennifer's staged snowbank picture with the caption, "When you try to bury someone in notices and end up buried yourself." The post had 63 likes. A few weeks later, I got a check in the mail from the HOA for $350, along with a letter apologizing for the enforcement errors. The letter said that the board had implemented new oversight procedures to prevent similar issues in the future. I deposited the check and put the letter in my binder. The neighborhood has been quiet since then. The new finance committee lead is a retired accountant who actually reads the bylaws before sending out notices. The blue painter tape is gone. The orange cones are gone. The fake tow threats are gone. I still see some of the other residents who were targeted by Jennifer. We do not talk about it much, but there is a shared understanding. We all know what it was like to be on the wrong end of someone who thought rules were weapons. I went back to the frozen neighborhood entrance gate this morning, the same spot where Jennifer had blocked my car and screamed at me while the line of cars honked behind me. The keypad works fine now. No cones, no tape, no staged photos. I have been thinking about what Tom said that night after the meeting. He said, "You did not win because you had better evidence. You won because you refused to let her control the narrative." He was right. Jennifer tried to bury me in notices, but she did not count on me keeping every single one. She tried to fake the payment records, but she did not count on me having a bank confirmation that proved otherwise. She tried to stage photos to make my property look like a hazard, but she did not count on my doorbell camera catching her in the act. The trump card was not just the payment proof, it was the fact that I had been patient enough to let her keep digging until she hit bedrock. I acted like I was backing down, because timing was the whole weapon. And when the moment came, I presented it during the final showdown and quoted her own words back to her. "I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink." Except in the end, she was the one who ran out. The neighbor who fact-checked her instantly was Tom, standing there with his body camera at the tow truck standoff, calling out the fake fire lane claim in real time. The HOA sent a correction email retracting the smear, and her staged photos got used against her. A state procedure complaint forced the HOA to respond, and once the audit started, the whole house of cards collapsed. The city warning about interfering with snow routes was the final nail. The board publicly reversed her policy to avoid municipal fines, and Jennifer was out. I still have the binder. I probably do not need it anymore, but it feels good to know it is there. Just in case. I ran into Carl at the mailbox yesterday. He said the new finance lead asked him to shred all of Jennifer's winter enforcement files because they were taking up too much space and most of them were nonsense anyway. He said it took him 3 hours and 2 full recycling bins. I told him I was glad it was over. He said, "Me too. I have worked for this HOA for 8 years, and I have never seen anything like that." She had people convinced that a snow pile was an existential threat. We both laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that comes after you have been holding your breath for too long. I think about what would have happened if I had not kept the records, if I had not set up the doorbell camera, if I had not called Tom, if I had not filed the police report. Jennifer would still be here, and I would probably be facing a lien or worse. But I did keep the records. I did set up the camera. I did call Tom. And now I am still here. And she is not. That is the thing about HOA battles. The people who win are not the ones who yell the loudest or have the most authority. They are the ones who document everything and wait for the right moment to pull the trigger. Jennifer thought she had all the power because she controlled the budget and the notices and the tow companies. But power is only as good as the system that backs it up, and once the system realized she was lying, the power evaporated. I am not rebuilding anymore. I am rebuilt. The neighborhood is quiet. The snow gets plowed. The sidewalks get cleared. The cones stay in storage. And every time I pull up to that gate, I remember the morning when Jennifer stood there screaming while a line of cars honked behind me, and I think about how far I have come since then. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you being here.